The first time Daniel and Ethan were paired together, it was by accident, or at least, that was what the teacher claimed. A literature project needed partners, and with uneven numbers in the class, the shy boy found himself face to face with the newcomer. Daniel's heart pounded when Ethan slid into the seat beside him, smiling with the kind of ease that made everyone feel chosen. "You don't talk much, do you?" Ethan teased lightly, opening his notebook. His voice carried no malice, only curiosity. Daniel shook his head, eyes fixed on the desk. I talk enough," he murmured, but Ethan chuckled, not unkindly. "Good. Then I'll do the talking, and you can keep me from failing." For the rest of the period, Daniel found himself listening to Ethan ramble about music, late-night gaming sessions, and dreams of traveling beyond the small town they all felt trapped in. Daniel barely contributed, yet he felt strangely alive just sitting there, the air between them buzzing with an energy he couldn't explain. Over the next week, the project gave them reasons to meet after class. They lingered in the library, whispering over highlighted passages, their heads nearly touching as they bent over the same page. Daniel tried to keep his distance, but Ethan had a way of breaking down his walls without even trying. When Ethan laughed at one of Daniel's hesitant comments, not mocking but genuinely delighted, Daniel's chest warmed in a way that startled him. Michael noticed almost immediately. One afternoon, as they packed their bags, Michael leaned close. "Careful, Dan," he said in a half-joking tone. "He's got that look that makes people do stupid things." Daniel blinked, confused. "What do you mean?" "I mean," Michael said, slinging his bag over his shoulder, "you're not exactly subtle. You blush every time he breathes in your direction." The words burned, not because they were cruel, but because they were true. Daniel tried to laugh it off, insisting that it was only a school project, nothing more. Michael didn't push, but the concern in his eyes lingered long after the conversation ended. That evening, Daniel went to see Mr. Collins as planned. The tutor greeted him warmly, ushering him inside the familiar apartment filled with the scent of coffee and old books. They reviewed equations for a while, but Mr. Collins soon reached for Daniel's hand, lacing their fingers together. His touch was steady, practiced, reassuring. "You're distracted," Mr. Collins said softly, searching Daniel's face. Daniel's heart skipped. He forced a smile. "Just tired. Schoolwork, you know." But the lie tasted bitter. While Mr. Collins kissed his forehead, Daniel's mind drifted back to the library, to Ethan's grin and the way his laughter had echoed in Daniel's ears long after it ended. The contrast was stark. Mr. Collins offered safety, maturity, a love hidden in shadow. Ethan offered something lighter, brighter, yet terrifying in its possibility. Days blurred into weeks, and Daniel could no longer deny the current pulling him toward Ethan. They stayed late after class, finishing their project long before the deadline but inventing excuses to meet again. Ethan started walking him halfway home, chatting about nothing and everything, and Daniel found himself laughing in ways he never had with anyone else. The ease between them frightened him, because it felt dangerously close to what he secretly longed for. One afternoon, as they packed up their notes in the library, Ethan hesitated. His voice dropped, hesitant for the first time since Daniel had met him. "I like talking to you. More than anyone else here." Daniel froze. His pulse roared in his ears. "Why?" he whispered. "Because you're real," Ethan said simply, his gaze steady. "Everyone else wants to impress. You just listen." The silence that followed stretched taut, filled with words neither dared to say. For a heartbeat, Ethan leaned closer, his hand brushing Daniel's. The touch sent a shiver racing through him, but panic surged just as quickly. Daniel pulled his hand back, forcing a nervous laugh. "We should finish this tomorrow," he muttered, gathering his things. Ethan let him go, but not before Daniel caught the flicker of disappointment in his eyes. That night, Daniel lay awake, torn between guilt and desire. Mr. Collins's affection weighed heavy on his conscience, yet Ethan's nearness haunted him with an ache that refused to fade. He told himself he had done the right thing by resisting, but deep down, he knew the boundary he clung to was weakening. Temptation was no longer an idea, it was alive, pressing closer each day, and Daniel feared that soon, he would no longer be able to resist it. After that stormy night, things between Ryan and me began to change, not loudly, but in the quiet spaces between words, in the glances that lasted too long. We didn't speak about what happened, yet every moment afterward felt charged, like the air before lightning strikes. Ryan stopped coming around as often. When he did, he acted like nothing had changed, joking with Liam, tossing chips across the couch, his laughter echoing through the house as if the night of the storm never existed. But his eyes gave him away. They found mine in the middle of conversations, held on a fraction too long before darting away again. That fleeting connection burned more than any confession could have done. I told myself it was nothing, that I'd imagined it, but late at night, when I heard his voice from the living room, I'd find excuses to pass by, pretending to grab a drink or look for something I didn't need. Every time our eyes met, the air grew heavier, until words became unnecessary. One afternoon, Liam left for a weekend trip with some college friends. Ryan showed up the next day, saying he had to drop off some of Liam's stuff. I almost told him to leave it at the door, but my voice betrayed me. "You can come in." He stepped inside, glancing around the quiet house. "Didn't know you'd be alone." I shrugged. "Liam's out till Sunday." Ryan hesitated at the doorway, then closed it gently behind him. The sound of the latch clicking felt louder than it should have. We stood there for a moment, two people trapped by silence and secrets. Before he spoke, "I've been trying not to come here," he admitted softly. "Why?" I asked, though I already knew that. He exhaled, running a hand through his hair. "Because I can't look at you and pretend nothing happened. And I can't tell Liam either. He trusts me." His voice broke slightly on the last word, and something inside me cracked open. I wanted to tell him to stop, to leave before this went any further, but I didn't. Instead, I said, "Then don't look at me like that." He looked up anyway. His eyes were steady, unreadable. "I can't help it." We stood inches apart. I could hear his heartbeat, or maybe it was mine, pounding against the fragile quiet of the room. The world outside felt distant, irrelevant. All that existed was the space between us, shrinking with every breath. When he reached out, his hand trembled before it found my cheek. The warmth of his skin sent a pulse through me, like fire finding dry wood. He didn't move closer at first, just looked at me, waiting for something, permission, maybe. I didn't say a word, then he kissed me. It wasn't desperate or rough, it was hesitant, full of fear and wanting. The kind of kiss that asks a question no one can answer. For a moment, everything else disappeared, my brother, the guilt, the world outside that would never understand. There was only the dizzying truth that I wanted him to. When we finally pulled apart, Ryan's eyes were wide, conflicted. "This can't happen again," he whispered. That I nodded, though neither of us moved. He lingered another second, his hand still resting against my jaw, then turned away, his breath shaking. I should go. I didn't stop him, but when the door closed, it felt like all the air went with him. That night, I tried to convince myself it meant nothing. But the ghost of his touch refused to fade. I could still feel the warmth of his lips, still hear his voice saying my name as if it meant something sacred. Over the next few days, I buried myself in my sketches, drawing faces that looked like his, hands reaching for something they could never have. Ryan didn't call, didn't text, but every time my phone buzzed, I hoped it was him. A week later, he showed up again. Liam was in the backyard fixing the car, and Ryan came straight to my room, closing the door quietly behind him. "We need to talk," he said. I stood, my pulse quickening. "About what?" He looked torn, his jaw tight. "I can't stop thinking about you, Ethan. I tried to ignore it, but I can't." His voice cracked with frustration, and before I could answer, he stepped closer, his breath trembling. "Tell me this isn't real. Tell me you don't feel it too." I couldn't. The lie wouldn't come. He looked at me for a long moment, then shook his head, almost in defeat. "I know it's wrong. But it feels impossible to walk away." His words lingered like smoke, filling the small room with something dangerous and undeniable. I didn't touch him this time. I just watched as he left again, his shoulders heavy, the door closing behind him like a secret sealing itself shut. I thought that was the end, that we'd finally done the right thing. But deep down, I knew this story wasn't finished. Not yet. I thought secrets could stay buried if no one spoke them aloud, but silence has a way of betraying you. The air in the house grew tense after that last encounter with Ryan. Every word with Liam felt like walking across a thin layer of glass. He didn't know, but somehow, I could feel his suspicion growing in the spaces where our laughter used to live. Ryan stopped visiting for a while, claiming he was busy with work. I tried to believe him. But I saw the messages he never sent, the drafts left unsent in his chat window when I borrowed Liam's phone. My name, half typed, half deleted, proof of everything we were trying to hide. Then one evening, everything came undone. Liam had gone to pick up dinner, and Ryan dropped by unexpectedly. I hadn't seen him in weeks. When I opened the door, he looked exhausted, eyes heavy, shoulders tense, like he'd been fighting something inside him for too long. "I needed to see you," he said quietly. My chest tightened. "Ryan, we can't." "I know," he interrupted. "But I can't keep pretending you're just Liam's brother. Every time I try to forget, it just hurts worse." He stepped closer, his voice barely a whisper now. Tell me to leave, Ethan, and I will. I wanted to. I should have. But the words wouldn't come. Instead, I stood frozen as his hand brushed mine, gentle, trembling, familiar, and then Liam's voice came from the doorway. What the hell is going on here? The sound hit like thunder. Ryan jumped back, guilt flashing across his face. Liam stood there, holding a bag of takeout, his eyes wide with betrayal that needed no explanation. The silence that followed was louder than any argument could be. Liam, I started, but he cut me off. Don't, he said, his voice shaking. Don't lie to me, Ethan. Ryan tried to speak. It's not what you think. Liam laughed bitterly. Really? Because it looks exactly like what I think. The air felt suffocating. I wanted to disappear. Ryan stepped forward, his tone desperate now. Liam, I never meant for this to happen. I tried to stop it. But Liam dropped the bag on the floor. You tried. You were supposed to be my friend. My brother. And you, he turned to me, eyes wet with fury and disbelief. And you, Ethan, how could you? I couldn't look at him. I didn't plan it, I whispered. It just happened. Liam's voice broke. You don't just fall for someone who's off limits. You choose it, over and over, until it destroys everything. He stormed out of the room. Ryan reached for him, but Liam shoved his hand away. Don't ever come back, he said coldly, then slammed the door behind him. The silence that followed was unbearable. Ryan stood there, breathing hard, eyes glistening. I'm sorry, he said, barely audible. I never wanted to hurt anyone. I nodded, though my throat burned too much to speak. You should go, I finally managed. He hesitated for a long moment, then whispered, take care of yourself, Ethan, and walked out into the night. That was the last time I saw him. Days turned into weeks, and the house felt hollow without the sound of Liam's laughter or Ryan's footsteps. Liam avoided me, leaving early and coming home late. When we did cross paths, his silence said everything words couldn't. I tried apologizing, explaining, begging him to understand, but forgiveness isn't something you can rush. To cope, I turned to my art. Every night, I painted, colors spilling into shapes of regret and longing. Faces blurred into memory, eyes filled with apologies. It was the only place I could breathe. Months later, Liam finally spoke to me again. It was quiet, over breakfast, his tone tired but soft. I don't hate you, he said. But I don't know how to look at you the same way yet. I nodded. I understand. He gave a small nod back, the faintest hint of peace in his eyes. That was enough for me. Years later, I saw Ryan again by chance, at an art exhibit in the city. He stood across the room, older, calmer, wearing the same familiar expression that once haunted my dreams. Our eyes met, and time seemed to fold in on itself. There were no words, no apologies left to give. Just understanding, quiet, bittersweet, complete. That he smiled once, almost sadly, and then turned away. As he disappeared into the crowd, I realized that some stories don't end in love or closure. Some end in lessons, about desire, about consequence, about the thin line between right and wrong. And as I stood there, surrounded by the paintings that held all the pieces of us, I whispered to myself, he fell for me, and I couldn't stop him. But I learned to forgive the boy who couldn't stop loving back. Time doesn't erase what happened, it only dulls the edges, softens the sharpness of memory until it feels like a dream you're afraid to wake from. It's been 3 years since that night, the night everything broke apart. Liam moved to another city for work, Ryan disappeared from our lives entirely, and I stayed behind, trying to rebuild what was left of myself in the quiet aftermath. Art became the only place where I could make sense of it all. Every painting, every brushstroke felt like confession, a way of speaking when words felt too heavy. I filled canvases with faces half remembered, moments half forgiven. The colors were no longer angry or raw, they were calmer, reflective, as if I'd finally learned to live with the ache instead of running from it. One autumn afternoon, my work was displayed in a small downtown gallery. I didn't invite many people, only a few classmates and one family member, Liam. It had been months since we'd really talked, and even then, our conversations were polite, careful. I didn't expect him to come. But when I turned and saw him standing at the entrance, my heart stumbled. He looked older somehow, or maybe just steadier. His eyes lingered on the paintings lining the walls, landscapes of light and shadow, portraits of loneliness disguised as beauty. He stopped in front of one in particular, a dimly lit figure standing beneath a street lamp in the rain. It wasn't Ryan, not exactly, but the resemblance was impossible to miss. Liam crossed his arms, studying it for a long time. That one's honest, he finally said. It's not about him, I lied, though my voice betrayed me. He smiled faintly. You don't have to lie anymore, Ethan. I know. For a moment, we both just stood there, surrounded by strangers murmuring about brushstrokes and color palettes. The world had moved on, but we were still standing in the echo of something that once defined us. Liam exhaled softly. You know, for a long time I blamed you. I told myself you ruined everything. But I've realized, maybe I wasn't angry because you broke the rules. Maybe I was angry because I saw how much you loved him, and I couldn't understand it. His words struck deeper than I expected. I didn't mean to hurt anyone, I said quietly. I know, he replied. And I didn't mean to make you feel like you had to carry all the guilt. He paused, his tone gentler now. We were all just young, trying to figure out what love was supposed to look like. It felt like something unspoken between us finally loosened, not forgiveness exactly, but understanding. After he left, I stayed behind to help close up. The gallery grew quiet, the smell of fresh paint and cold air mingling in the empty room. I turned off the lights one by one, until only the soft glow from the street outside remained, and that's when I saw him. Ryan stood outside the glass door, hands in his pockets, watching from the sidewalk. For a heartbeat, I wondered if I was imagining him again, another ghost conjured by memory. But when I opened the door, the autumn air rushed in, and there he was, unmistakably real. That he looked the same, yet not at all, older, calmer, wearing that same hesitant smile I remembered too well. Didn't think you'd show up, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. That he shrugged lightly. Didn't think I should. But I saw your name on the flyer. I guess I wanted to see what became of us. Of us? I echoed. That he nodded. You. Me. Everything we were and couldn't be. There was no bitterness in his tone, only quiet acceptance. For a moment, we stood in silence, watching cars pass by, the world moving forward as if it hadn't once stopped for us. I'm glad you came, I said finally. He smiled, soft, fleeting, sincere. Me too. You turned the pain into something beautiful, Ethan. I think that's what love's supposed to do. He didn't stay long. Just a few words, a few shared glances, and then he was gone again, swallowed by the city lights. But it was enough. Not a reunion, not closure, just peace. As I locked up the gallery and stepped into the night, I looked up at the sky, dark, endless, scattered with stars. Somewhere out there, Ryan was walking his own path, and Liam was learning to forgive, and I was finally learning to live. Some stories end in heartbreak, others in healing. Ours, I realized, was both, and maybe that's what made it real.